Urgent. The cauldron of vengeance has snapped shut. The Ukrainian Armed Forces did what they had been preparing for a long time. Our forces launched a counterattack. Ukrainian flags have been raised. A Syrskyi expert announced that the Russians were simply thrown out of there. Putin's propaganda burst like a soap bubble. Z-bloggers can no longer contain their emotions. Kupiansk has become a grave for the world's second army. The generals in Moscow are beside themselves with rage over what the Ukrainian Armed Forces did there. More on all this coming up. Watch until the end. Ukraine Today welcomes you. Rina Tazlanov here with the latest events. In an emergency move, a counterattack was launched in Dnipropetrovsk region and the village of Tike was recaptured. This was reported by a soldier with the call sign Muchnoy.
Our Cossacks on this section acted precisely and cohesively with that cold composure that brings results. Thanks to the coordinated actions of the assault groups and the accurate work of the support units, we managed to bring the village of Tike back under our control. According to
Ukrainian forces have advanced into the Dnipropetrovsk region. They launched a counterattack in the direction of Alexandrivka. Our defenders advanced cautiously but confidently. Ukrainian fighters cleared out positions and key points. They managed to break through the Russian defenses. Ukrainian flags have already appeared in the western and eastern parts of the settlement.
This means not just a presence, but perimeter control and consolidation on the ground.
Meanwhile, the 67th Mechanized Brigade published footage of our soldiers in action and captioned it. Through coordinated and precise actions, competent planning and courageous execution, the fighters of the 67th Separate Mechanized Brigade drove the enemy out of Tike and cleared the village of occupiers. In addition, it has become known that the defense forces are at this very moment conducting a sweep of Russian forces in the urban area of Pokrovsk. This was reported by the East Military Group.
In Pokrovsk, search and assault operations and the elimination of the enemy in the urban area are ongoing. In Mirnohrad, Ukrainian units are holding defensive lines and eliminating the enemy on the approaches to the city.
To ensure uninterrupted support for the units, the defense forces are organizing additional logistics routes in Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad. Meanwhile, against this backdrop, Putin's propaganda has once again simply burst. Russian propaganda outlets admit that the Russian army's capture of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region does not correspond to reality, despite the fact that earlier the Russian command reported the alleged capture of the city.
So, what do we have at the moment? There is no advance in the city. And this is despite the fact that the liberation of the city was reported on November 20th.
The propaganda channel adds that the occupiers are being driven forward under shelling and drones so as not to lose face, in front of the high command. In addition, propagandists claim that getting into the city now is practically impossible.
Moreover, delivering ammunition and provisions to the city was already difficult. For a long time now, they could mostly be delivered by air. With the worsening weather conditions, this has become an almost impossible task. An additional difficulty is the downing of supply aircraft, by their own side, due to poor coordination.
Kupiansk has become a real grave for the Russian army. Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrskyi made an urgent statement. Thus, the Ukrainian Defense Forces units managed to significantly improve their tactical position in the city. The routes for Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups have been blocked. Syrskyi noted that the clearing of Kupiansk from Russian troops is ongoing, who have had successes, but only in the realm of propaganda.
I listened to reports on the operational situation. The information is encouraging. Our units managed to significantly improve their tactical position directly in the city. The infiltration routes of enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups have been blocked.
The defense forces are working on gradually pushing the Russian army out of its bridgehead north of the city, as well as from several other areas where the Russians still maintain their presence. In addition, Viktor Trehubov, head of the communications department of the Joint Forces Group, stated that Ukrainian troops pushed the enemy back on the northern outskirts of Kupiansk and disrupted Russia's plans. According to him, our forces managed to complicate the enemy's supply lines and create an effective kill zone around the city. However, Russian propaganda continues to claim that Kupiansk has allegedly been taken.
We managed to create a kill zone around the city quite effectively and destroy those who try to approach using UAVs. No matter how many reinforcements they bring in, they still have to crawl across open ground, and the drone doesn't care how many of them are crawling there. And
that's not all yet. Ukrainian defenders have also completely driven the occupiers out of Ivanivka in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Our assault groups managed to advance deep inside and take control of all key points.
the settlement of Ivanivka has finally been completely freed from the occupiers' grip. Now, there are no more buts. The territory has been cleared down to the last hideout. The enemy is no longer there. Our assault groups advanced deeper, crushed the remaining resistance, and took control of all the key points that still kept the situation in the gray zone.
Pokrovsk is in flames, and in the south, the occupiers are being torn to pieces. Ukrainian defense forces are conducting powerful search and assault operations, clearing the city of Russian invaders. In Mirnohrad, our forces are holding the line, blocking the enemy at every position. Moscow is shouting about a complete encirclement, but the reality at the front is completely different. The occupiers are falling into a trap. All the hottest details, exclusive footage from the front line. Watch.
Along the front line, which stretches for more than 1,250 kilometers, over 710,000 Russian occupiers have been deployed. Despite the enemy's large army, Ukraine's defense forces have advanced in 4 directions, while the Russians have only managed to advance in 1.
Putin has repeatedly claimed that it has been captured. Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad, Kostiantynivka, not to mention others, all of them. In Kupiansk especially, they raised flags several times, and it wasn't just reported to Putin. He himself announced that the city had been captured, just like Vovchansk. In other words, he needs to demonstrate the actual capture of territory and show us that offensive operations will continue. And if we don't accept his terms, especially if we refuse to give up Donetsk region completely, he will, accordingly, continue to develop and intensify offensive operations in the winter. He increases pressure on the front lines and steps up pressure on the rear, on ordinary civilians, on the energy sector, so that people freeze in winter to sow panic and doubt, and in these few months actually achieve his goals. At the first stage, this means a ceasefire on his terms and the signing of a peace agreement, and then preparation for possible new operations.
Russia did not strike the dam of the Pechenyi reservoir in Kharkiv region. Traffic on the road surface has been stopped. The American Institute for the Study of War does not confirm the Russians' claims of success. In the southern part of Vovchansk and in the Kupiansk district, from the
Vovchansk direction on the line. Here it is. Maniva.
One Russian war correspondent claimed that their troops advanced in the southern part of Vovchansk, while another said that the Russians had captured the village of Lyman and control 80% of Vovchansk. The occupiers are using the tactic of shading in areas they allegedly captured. In many cases, fighting is still ongoing in these areas, and it's too early to talk about them being captured.
This is a screen grab from the Creamy Whim project. It was recorded that events are taking place 500 meters deep into territory that they themselves had previously shaded as being under Russian control. In general, there are the most questions about the shading done by this particular project. For them, literally the defeat of a lone Russian soldier by an FPV drone is a reason to shade in a couple of kilometers up to the place where it happened. But at the same time, it's important to remember that control in today's reality is a very relative concept, especially in cities. Because while infiltration is at least somewhat difficult in open terrain, urban neighborhoods where it's easy to hide from drones are basically wide open. So for now, all we can really say is that in the area previously shaded as Russian, there is fighting going on, which in itself is not a bad thing.
Russian forces have continued combat operations in the Zaporizhzhia region. In particular, the occupiers attacked near Hulyapol and Orikhiv. However, there are no confirmed changes to the front line. At
Hulyapol, activity is unlikely to be any less today. Our assault unit is also operating here. You know that the Russians, from time to time, they also spread fake reports claiming they've advanced somewhere. Obviously, these fake reports are primarily aimed at Ukrainian society in order to create a certain emotional atmosphere.
On November 21st, propaganda channels released a video showing soldiers holding the Russian Federation flag in the Oleksandrivka direction, claiming the occupation of Tika and Otradne. Ukrainian soldiers have liberated the village of Tika in the Sinelnikove district of Dnipropetrovsk region from the occupiers. There is video evidence confirming this. Ukrainian warriors continue to defend Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad. In a video published on December 6th, 3 Ukrainian soldiers raised the flag on Yakub Kolas Lane in the northern part of the city, which indicates holding positions. The commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine called this stage of the defense extremely difficult.
Our strategy is to exhaust the Russian army as much as possible, prevent its advance, hold our territory, while simultaneously striking the enemy in the rear, in operational depth, and on Russian territory itself. The goal is to undermine its defensive potential and industrial capabilities.
General Oleksandr Syrskyi also stated in an interview that Ukrainian forces are holding their positions in the north of Pokrovsk.
The Ukrainian army is conducting a strategic defensive operation aimed at containing the enemy's advance, preventing their breakthrough deeper in, inflicting maximum losses, and carrying out counteroffensive actions in those sectors where we see the enemy's vulnerabilities. At
the same time, the Russians have managed to significantly complicate Ukrainian logistics in the Pokrovsk direction. The occupiers' goal is to completely cut off Ukrainian supply and evacuation routes. However, they have not yet succeeded in encircling the Ukrainian garrisons in either city. This is also confirmed by the American Institute for the Study of War.
Ukrainian forces are maintaining limited logistics in the Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad direction. However, Russian troops are very likely able to disrupt Ukrainian evacuation routes and ground lines of communication using artillery and drones.
The defense forces are trying to organize additional logistical routes to supply their units. Throughout the week, the main focus was the north of Donetsk region. That is exactly where the Russians were transferring manpower. The transfers took place in convoys accompanied by military police.
The dominant direction this week was the north of Donetsk region. From the Berdyansk direction through the city of Mariupol toward Volnovakha, between 10 and 20 trucks were recorded daily, mostly carrying personnel and without tactical markings. This indicates new units after training and matches the training schedule.
Despite heavy losses, the pace of the Russian Federation's offensive is increasing. At the same time, Russia continues to intensify strikes on Ukrainian cities.
Meanwhile, retribution is catching up with the enemy not only at the front but also in the rear. Ukrainian drones have broken through to previously untouchable Kremlin targets. The Russian leadership is in a panic. An apocalypse in the very heart of the Russian regime. What was destroyed by the armed forces of Ukraine, and how does this threaten authorities in Moscow? All sensational details coming up next.
Recent months, Chechnya has become the epicenter of tension amid the increased intensity of Ukrainian drone attacks. Airports in the North Caucasus have suspended operations. A drone strike was recorded near the skyscraper in Grozny City on Kadyrov Avenue. One of the high-rises sustained damage. The video shows that at least 10 floors were affected. A day before this, Kadyrov declared that he was ready to go to war with Europe at any moment and promised to force it to apologize.
We definitely won't stand on ceremony, Vladimir Vladimirovich. We're waiting for the order. It will all be over very quickly and definitely not in favor of those who decided to start a war with Russia. I have one question. Vladimir Vladimirovich, if this all starts, you won't be upset with us if they immediately start apologizing voluntarily, will you?
Notably, the area with the high-rises is located just 800 meters from Kadyrov's residence. His administration was seriously frightened because Don might not have survived this blow given his serious health problems.
The city of Grozny and the modern Grozny city complex are prominent symbols of the Kadyrov regime, and as I understand it, indeed the main accomplishment of the Kadyrov regime.
Several offices of Chechen government bodies are located in the affected buildings of Grozny city.
In particular, according to mapping services, the building houses the Chechen Ministry of Tourism, the Regional Department for Relations with Religious and Public Organizations, the Regional Office of the Ministry of Justice, the Chechen Security Council, the Republic's Audit Chamber, the local Ombudsman's Reception Office, the United Russia Party's Reception Office, and the Regional Election Commission.
The main target of the attack may have been the FSB building, which is located nearby. But Russian electronic warfare made its own adjustments.
This is not a strike against the civilian population. This is a strike against government authorities, absolutely legitimate, absolutely lawful.
This is already the second strike on the region in a week. Earlier, UAVs struck the FSB buildings in Achkoy Martan and the district police department in Gudermes. Chechnya had not been subjected to attacks by the Ukrainian Armed Forces since December of last year. At that time, the Rosgvardia barracks came under attack.
These are simply isolated strikes against Chechen security forces who are actively involved, often act as a coercive force against Russians themselves to make them fight. And in order to significantly distract them, we strike at them.
Ukrainian defenders continue to fight the occupiers, destroying their weapons behind enemy lines. This time, as preparations were underway to launch Shaheds from Milarovo in the Rostov region, several Ukrainian drones struck the UAV launch platforms.
This was one of 6 locations from which the Shaheds were being launched. Milarovo, a strategically significant location, remains a truly major hub, serving as a very large and crucial base for the extensive storing of Shaheds and the subsequent launching of devastating strikes. Now, these particular sites have unfortunately become permanent and well-established facilities, from which a substantial number, indeed up to 100, Shaheds can be launched in a single intense night of operations. That's a lot.
Milarovo is an important road and rail junction. From Milarovo to the line of contact is more than 150 kilometers. From here, Russia launches Shaheds at Ukraine almost every night. Look, something beautifully white is flying gracefully. Oh my goodness, Mama! After successful attacks by Ukrainian defenders on Russian airfields, this year, new air defense positions appeared at the Milarovo air base, which were not there in 2024. Hangars were built in place of open aircraft parking areas.
Naturally, we pay very special and indeed critical attention to this particular facility, which is a truly major and strategically important base for the deployment and operation of Shaheds. These Shaheds have now unfortunately become one of the 3 primary and most significant means of striking against us, causing considerable concern and requiring constant vigilance. These are Shaheds, guided aerial bombs, and ballistic missiles. These 3 components, if we learn how to fight them and counter them, life will be much better for us. Oh.
Foreign agencies are reporting a record intensity of drone attacks on Russian regions. In November, the number of drones launched from Ukraine increased. This is also confirmed by official data from the Russian Ministry of Defense. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues its fight against the occupiers. And
what do you think about the latest events? Share your opinions in the comments, like the video, and stay up to date with the main news. There's more to come.